to Exodus chapter 12. This is Communion Sunday. We'll be receiving communion this time toward the end of the service. I want to talk about the elements a little bit before we actually take them today. And let's see here. I'll try to. Exodus chapter 12. Are you there? Give me a big smile when you get there. Give me a smile if you're lost. Oh, that's right. If you're still breathing, give me a smile. Oh, there we go. Okay. I was getting concerned there for a moment. I want to read just a few verses, and we're going to come back and look at one verse in particular, and then we're going to look around the Bible and then come back to this and see how this fits us today. Is that okay? I'm glad you're so agreeable. That's what we're doing. So punch your neighbor and say, get ready. Beginning in chapter 12 of Exodus and verse 37. Exodus chapter 12, verse 37. Israel had been held in bondage for over 400 years. The Lord had promised to bring them out to the promised land. That's what's getting ready to take place here. This is the night before, the day before they take off out of Egypt into the wilderness to go to the promised land. So we pick that up in verse 37. Some of the instructions here. Then the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides children. A mixed multitude went up with them also, and flocks and herds, and a great deal of livestock. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they had brought out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were driven out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared provisions for themselves. I want you to look again there at verse 39. They baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they had brought out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were driven out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared provisions for themselves. We're going to stop there. We may pick up a couple of other verses along the line. So unleavened bread is basically bread without yeast, right? God left something out. You leave something out. How many of you have had surprises in life? Somebody told you we're going to do something and they forgot to tell you the details. A few years ago, I was invited to come to China for ministry, and it was an incredible time. I went to Hong Kong for a few days, or a week, or whatever it was, then over to the mainland, and we did some ministry, and it was a great trip, a great opportunity for blessing, but there's some things they left out about what was going to happen. And I want to share some of those with you, because there's times we get blessed by what's been left out. Blessed by omission. The Great Omission. So what was it? Well, they forgot to tell us to bring any peanut butter. You say, what difference does that make? So I'm going to show you some things that I ate. I ate all of this, and I'm not going to show you things that I ate that wouldn't be suitable in here before lunch. Okay, but I will show you some of these things. So this is in Hong Kong, and every day you have to go and buy duck to eat, and there's no refrigeration. So this is sitting out, and there's flies all over it. Just adds to the protein. Okay? Now, if you didn't have duck, you could have a surprise. So you see that pot just steaming and boiling? There are dumplings in there. Now, what they don't tell you is what is in a dumpling. So you have no clue. And if you can talk them into telling you what it is, they tell you in Spanish, or not Spanish, they tell you in Chinese. So you don't know. So every bite was an adventure. You didn't know if it came out of the sea, from the ground, from under the ground, from the air, or literally anywhere in between. They all look the same. They all look the same until you bite into them. So there's something they forgot to tell. So that's some of the things I can show you that we ate in Hong Kong. Then we went to China, and we had duck tongue. Who said, ooh? How do you know until you try it? So this little white thing right here, these red things, they're so good. You know what they are? They are peppers that are so hot you can't taste anything else. So you want plenty of those. So this little white duck tongue all through here, and I'll just be honest with you, it was good. It was good. So then, and there's other things there that I won't identify in this crowd. Okay? So then we had there's a variety of meats here. There is dog, there is donkey, and there is frog. I promise you, I know what it's like to preach with a frog in my throat. I ate all of this. We ate all of this. Most of us ate all of this. Some people fasted for 3 weeks. So, have you ever used chopsticks? You know the great thing about chopsticks? You can't get a big bite. You know, the bad thing is, you got to eat longer and longer and longer. So we had donkey, we had dog, we had frog. They have a legend there that if you eat black dog, then when you come back to the States, dogs won't have anything to do with you. My dog kind of likes me, so the dog I eat must not have been black. By the way, you can't tell once it's on your table. I'll just throw that in. This is barbecued carp. Now, one thing I didn't tell you about all of this is they don't clean the animals that they prepare for you. It's all there. It is all there. So when you get those hot peppers and the noodles, and then they put a frog on it, and they just get a cleaver, and it's all there. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. This is carp. It is. If you're the host of the table, you have to eat the eyeballs out of the carp before anybody else can eat. With every meal, there's something good like that. The eyeballs of the carp was not as bad as some of the other stuff when I had the host. This is duck now in China. Again, no refrigeration. Every day you have to get your food. That was the one we ate that night. This is sea snail. Okay, some of these I had to blow up so you can see, especially some of these later ones. So we had sea snail. Now they're telling me how great the strip is of China and Hong Kong. You're going to see all these places. You're going to see Tiananmen Square. You're going to see the terracotta soldiers. You're going to see all these things. You're going to go up on the Great Wall. They didn't tell us. We're going to eat sea snail or eel. Anybody want to go on a mission trip? So once you get with the eel, that was pretty easy, but then you get to these sea urchins. No, that's not fish bait. That was the dinner. That was on entree. Okay, and for me, this was the worst. This is just a bowl of fat, and you hope it's an animal fat, and it's in this watery red sauce, and that's just clumps of fat. And being from America and being the host, guess what? You get to eat first, and everybody watches you. This one was difficult. Larva. They didn't tell us about this stuff. Now, had they told us to bring peanut butter, we could have taken it in the country anyway because they confiscated everything like that when you get to the border. So we ate this and a whole lot of stuff that I just can't show you on a Sunday morning. But so there was a great surprise. Sometimes you're surprised by the things that are left out. Sometimes it's a good surprise. Sometimes it's not. How many have ever been surprised? So God surprises these people. You thought, well, I forgot all about the Bible, didn't you? God surprises these people in Exodus. They're coming out of the country, and there's some surprises there. God says, I'm going to leave some things out because if I don't, you'll never leave. So we often associate blessing, the blessing of God with increase or with abundance or multiplication. We like it when God adds things or multiplies blessings to our lives. For instance, let's look at some of these in Scripture. Genesis, Adam and Eve, God blessed them and God said to them, be fruitful and what? Multiply. That's got to be a blessing, right? Be fruitful, multiply. Have dominion over everything on the earth. I mean, that seems like a real blessing. God's multiplying the blessings. So blessings, he says, I'm going to bless you. And then he says, I'm going to multiply. How many like multiplication blessings? Unless it's something I ate and you have to have seconds, right? So multiplication. How about with Noah? What does God tell Noah when it's all over? God says he blessed Noah and his sons, and then what? Be fruitful and multiply. So we see the multiplications. We always know God blesses when we have abundance, a prosperity or whatever. How about with Abraham? God tells Abraham, blessing, I will bless you. How many like blessings? And we all know in America, right? That means multiplication. So blessing, I will bless you. Multiplying, I will multiply your descendants, the stars of the heavens. He said, you are going to be so blessed that I'm going to multiply all this to you. Everything I have is yours. We like those types of blessings, right? How about Ishmael, God even blesses our mistakes at times. This Ishmael was a mistake when Abraham and Sarah got ahead of God and tried to work things out their own way. And so God says, as for this Ishmael, this guy you shouldn't have had, this trouble you got yourself into, I've heard you, even with your mistakes. Behold, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful, and I will, say it, multiply. Exceedingly. Now, if there's one thing I like about, I like the blessings of multiplication. If there's something else I like, it's exceeding multiplication. Right? How many like exceeding blessings? How many of you have had too many blessings, you just don't want any more? No one. I don't know what you're going to do for lunch today. Last week, everybody wanted to go have fried chicken after we spoke. I don't know what you're going to eat after today, right? So how about... So the generations after Abraham, Isaac and Jacob and Joseph, Genesis chapter 28, Genesis chapter 26, 28, and 48, talk about God multiplying them and tell them, I'm going to bless you exceedingly. How about the nation of Israel? What does God tell the nation of Israel? I know he told them more than that. All right. So if you can get it up and working, you can catch up to us. Otherwise, we'll do this without... You want to see more pictures, I know. Lunch is coming. So the nation of Israel, the Lord tells them in Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 3, therefore, hear, O Israel, be careful to observe it, that it may go well with you, that you will be multiplied greatly. We like those. The blessings for obedience, Deuteronomy chapter 7. Let's see. Can we get back to... There we go. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 12 and 13. Then it shall come to pass, because you listen to these judgments and do them, that the Lord your God will keep with you the covenant of mercy which he swore to your father, and he will love you and bless you and what? Multiply you. How about when he restored Israel? When he says Israel's going to become a nation again, what does he say? I will multiply, right? I will multiply them, and they shall not diminish. I will glorify them, and they shall not be small. So multiplication equals blessings. In our culture, we think that. We often associate the blessing of God with increase, or multiplied increase, or added increase. Sometimes we think, if we're not careful, we'll think we get holy by getting more. That sounds like we could all go home and be blessed right now. But sometimes you're more blessed by what God doesn't give you or what God takes away than you are by what he gives you. Okay? Exodus chapter 12, verse 39. We just looked at it. They baked for themselves unleavened cakes. What is unleavened? That means without, in our language, without yeast. Okay? So they made these flat kind of like flat bread. He said they baked unleavened cakes from the dough which they had brought out of Egypt. What is Egypt a symbol of? Of the world, or the world system. So they had to they brought the dough out. It was not leavened because they were driven out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared provisions for themselves. So God says you're going to have to bake bread without yeast. Now we all like yeast. How many like when they pass around the yeast rolls? And they're just oozing with butter. Some of you like homemade biscuits with gravy kind of blessings, right? Some of you like Krispy Kreme blessings. I get that. I get that. But God says, I want to take you a place, and in order for you to receive all the blessings, you've got to take something away. I've got to take something away. And it's going to be unleavened bread. How many get excited about unleavened bread? In a few moments, we're going to partake of communion at the end of the service. And some of you don't like that little wafer, but you know it's not meant for your taste. It's meant to remember the Lord. It's unleavened bread. That's what they had to eat every day. or at least during the festival here. So why, God? Why would you have unleavened bread? Surely, if you can do anything, you could have given yeast. If you had time to go through all these 10 plagues, if you had time to bring them out, you had time to meet with Moses and with Aaron, surely you had time to allow them to put yeast in their bread so it would taste better. And come on, nothing's too hard for God, right? So why didn't God do that? Why are they having to eat bread that's flat, that's unleavened without any yeast in it? Let me tell you why. Because God did not want Egypt's yeast in his people's loaves during this season. There were some things they had to separate from. There's some things God's calling the church of today in these last days to separate yourself from. Don't be just like Egypt. Don't go be just like the world. There's some things we have to be different at. How about you? Are there some things God's taken away from you? God's removed some people from you. God's left out some things from you. And you're thinking, God has punished me. No, what God's taken away from you, God is leaving some things out for you. Sometimes what God leaves out is making you a masterpiece. Amen. Sometimes we're blessed by what he doesn't give us. Don't mess it up by going back to Egypt because it tastes better there. God said, I'm taking you to a new place. I want to do something incredible in your life, but you've got to follow me. And the first step is you've got to have this unleavened bread. God is taking you to this new place. The yeast of the past will not do. Does that mean I can't have memories? No, you can still have memories of the past. Just don't live in those memories. God has brought you here to a new day. There's some people that couldn't come this far with you. And there's some people who've already received their reward, and they're not here with you now. And it may hurt a little bit, but God said, you know what? I'm making a masterpiece out of you, even though they have been removed, or things have been removed, or stuff has been removed out of your life. You're not being punished. I'm preparing you to go to a place they couldn't go. Those people back there in Egypt, they're eating yeast. They can't go where you're going. So God is using the things that he's taking away that you're having to get rid of, to having to give up, to make a masterpiece out of your life. What happens? Sometimes we're blessed by what God leaves out. So Julie and I, we grew up together. We were childhood sweethearts, and then we were high school sweethearts, and now we're sweethearts. And we lived in an area of California. It was the most beautiful area you could ever imagine. It was right off the coast. We lived in an area that was between Sacramento, Santa Cruz, and Monterey. Carmel by the sea. Have you heard of that? There's this drive, 17-mile drive. It's up Highway 1 on the coast. Homes at that time, back in the 70s, those homes were going at that time for $8 and $9 million. And we just knew that's where God was taking us. Because we were going to be blessed to suffer on the coast overlooking the Pacific Ocean in a $9 million house. Not everybody can suffer like that, but we were willing to. And then the call comes, God says, I want you to go to Texas. God, I don't have a horse. I have a hat from when I visited at a family reunion. I don't have a belt buckle. And God gave us a promotion, moved us to Dallas, Texas, and then through a series of events, we got here at a boom time, and not long after that, it was a bust time. And so during the boom time, I didn't continue studying what I should have been studying. I thought, God, you're taking that away. No, God said, no, that's not what I'm taking away. I'm taking away the thing you think is a blessing so you can receive the real blessing. So at that time, in 80, 81, when everything fell out of the industry that God had brought me here to, I had a great position, and I was flying every week somewhere, and it was just a high position in this company. I was in downtown and had this beautiful office and a tower, but God said, no, that's not what I've called you to. And I'm taking that away. Not as punishment, but I'm preparing you for something. Can I be honest with you? 40 years ago, when I was going to live at Carmel, I had never heard of Graham, Texas. I'm just being honest. But God said, I'm going to take away what you think is great so I can give you something really great. You know what's going on in those homes right now that 40 years ago sold for $9 million? There's homeless people living in tents. There's trash everywhere. You can't even get in your own yards because of the problems that are going on in the area where we live. You know, I could have tried to let's make a deal, but God said, no, I've got something better. And we're going to leave some things behind. Even though you don't understand. But God, the yeast that was out there where we lived is so much better than the yeast here at that time. God said, yeah, but you don't know. I'm taking you to the promised land. You have to leave Egypt. See, sometimes we're blessed because of what God leaves out. God didn't say, I'm going to take you to Graham and you're going to find the most wonderful people in the world. You're going to live in the greatest community on earth. He didn't tell us that at that time. He said, I'm going to take you to Dallas, and then to Louisville, and then the Sherman-Denison area. And you're going to be there for 30 years before you discover Graham, Texas. But I'm taking you somewhere. Now, Lord, another thing we had to explain to the Lord. You know where I'm coming from, right? Have you ever had to explain things to the Lord? So my wife is 7 months pregnant with our second child. Wait a minute, Lord. You're telling her to leave her doctor? And what I did, Brianne was already born, and she was the first grandchild on both sides, and we had grandparents that lived a mile from our house, and her another set of grandparents lived another mile the other direction from our house, and we didn't have to pay for child care because they all wanted to keep their first grandchild. Now we're moving to Dallas, Texas, and we don't know anybody, and we're not related to anybody. Lord, do you really know what you're doing? God says, wait a minute. Let's get rid of some leaven. I've got something incredible for you. And by not telling us where we're going and what we're going to do, God brought blessings like we've never experienced. God allowed us to know you. Amen. We're blessed. We're blessed because of that. Sometimes we're blessed by what God leaves out. Instead of God demonstrating his power through what he adds, he demonstrated his power by what he leaves out. So God, in Exodus chapters 7 through chapter 11, God shows his power to two different crowds. He shows to people who don't serve him by what he adds, and he shows his power to people who do follow him by what he leaves out. Now, if you were a child of God and you lived in Exodus chapter 12 or 7 through 12, you want to be in the crowd that God left things out of because God sent them plagues. First of all, in chapter 7, God sent Egyptians to the Egyptians. It says in verse 21, the waters became blood. So all the fish died and it stank. And then in chapter 8, the Bible tells us upon the Egyptians, he brought frogs everywhere. And you can read a New Translation. I mean, they had frogs everywhere. They went for breakfast. They would get into a counter, get their frosted flakes out and poured out. Instead of flakes of corn coming out, it was frogs that came out. Yeah. God says, God allowed that added blessing to the Egyptians, but not to his people. He left it out. Sometimes we're blessed by what God leaves out, right? So he takes away the frogs, and then there's lice. And the Bible doesn't tell us about lice, if there was different between the Egyptians and the Jews. This is the only one that is not clear. So I would assume, since all the other leaven, that God differentiated here too. And then it was flies everywhere. All over Egypt, all over all the livestock, all over the people. I mean, your baby's laying down in a crib, you put a fly net over it, and they're just covered inside. I mean, it was horrible. But not on God's people. God said, I'm going to bless you by leaving that out. The livestock got disease. All the Egyptians' livestock got disease, except in the land of Goshen, where all the children of Israel, none of their livestock got sick. God said, I'm going to bless you by leaving the disease out. Sometimes we're blessed by what God leaves out. Then there was boils. After that, boils upon every Egyptian, big and small. But on God's people, God said, I'm going to bless you by leaving that out. And then there was hail, and it hailed, and it ruined all the crops of the Egyptians, but God's people, there was no hail. God said, I'm going to bless you by leaving that, what? Out. And then there was darkness all over all of it. I mean, can you imagine? You're across the street from these Egyptians. Their house is all dark, but yours is bright and light. That's what the Bible says. There was no darkness in the Israelites' homes. And then there was death of the firstborn. Animals and humans, for everybody who was against God, but everybody who was for God, God said, I'm drawing a line. I'm going to bless my people by leaving death out. See, sometimes we're blessed by what God leaves out. In 1 Samuel chapter 17, have you ever heard of a man by the name of David? There's an army of Israel there, army of God. They went to war with the Philistines, and Israel eventually defeated the Philistines by something that was left out. The armies are there. The Bible tells us for 40 days they've been in battle array, and they're hollering at each other and calling each other names. There was no battle that takes place. And all of a sudden, this little bitty warrior by the name of David, who they had left out of the battle, comes and says, hey, let me go. I can take care of this guy. He's going to be like dog food by the end of the day. And somebody, the world, the king and the family said, we're going to leave him out. God said, no, I'm going to put him in. This time he's going to be the blessing. And then David is anointed king. Wow, what a great blessing. God anointed him as king. David is anointed king, but what God didn't tell, what God left out is there's already a king here. So God says, I'm going to give you men, and so God brings some men, and David, in 1 Samuel chapter 22, God brings him the rejects. Oh God, you forgot that part. You left that part out. I'm going to bless you with what I left out, he said. So David has been anointed king. God left out that there was already a king by the name of Saul. What God also left out is Saul was very insecure and very jealous. And what God also left out, the part that the King Saul was going to try to kill David over and over and assassinate him so he could never become king. And what God left out was, David, you're going to have to run for 14 years. You're going to have to run. You're going to have to live in the desert. You're going to have to hide in caves, and it's going to be dark, and it's going to be cold, and there's going to be mildew, and you're going to have to forage for food. But I promise, God said, I promise you, David, I'm going to send you men that are going to help you through that difficult time. And what God left out was a type of men that God would send. Now, what does God say? Look at verses 1 and 2, 1 Samuel 22. David therefore departed from there, and he escaped to the cave of Adullam. And everyone who was in distress, can you say distress? And everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented, gathered to David, so he became captain over them. And there were about 400 of these discouraged, distressed, and discontented people that he had to put up with. Wait a minute, God, you said you're going to send me this great army that's going to protect me. What God left out was you're going to have 400 scoundrels, 400 losers, and you've got to keep track of them. And you've got to feed them. You got to wipe their noses. You got to train them. These are your men. Why do I have to have people who are discouraged, Lord? How come I can't have people who are excited? You didn't tell me about that, God. You left that out. God said, I'm going to bless you with what I left out. I want our worship team to come back. Maybe you feel like God's abandoned you. See, what God leaves out is what he uses to make you a masterpiece. You might feel like you've been abandoned. You might feel like God has left some things out of your life. Or maybe you're upset because what God has taken away, your loved one, your circumstance, whatever you're going through. Or maybe you're upset because you think God is punishing you because of things you've lost. But I'm here to remind you today, what God leaves out is what he uses to make you into a masterpiece. God is doing something in your life. And the more he takes out, the more the blessings. Get ready, because blessings are coming if we'll just allow God to be God and stop dictating how many blessings we want. God has an unleavened blessing with your name on it today. I know some of you want yeast rolls dripping with butter. Some of you want those Krispy Kremes or Donut Supremes or whatever it is. Some of you want that. God has left something out on purpose. And what God has left out is meant to bring blessing to your life. Let me say it this way. Everything that is being removed from your life, and I know it hurts, I'm not trying to belittle it, but everything that is being removed from your life, God is using to make room so you can receive something fresh and new. Everything that you feel you've lost, whether it's people or stuff or positions or money or whatever it is, everything that's being removed, God's making room in your life so you can receive the blessing of God. There was no yeast in the bread. God didn't want Egypt's yeast in people's loaves. Come on, church. He doesn't want the world's yeast in your loaf. Amen. He's got something incredible for you to do for the king. I want you to notice something in the story just before we go to music. Quiet for just a few moments. Israel had to eat this bread every year at Passover. Why? Why? To remember. Not only what God brought them out of, but to encourage them to have faith where God was taking them to. That even when you think you don't have enough, you can still eat from God's supply. Because when God removes something from your life, He's making room for something even better. Here's what 1 Corinthians says. Get rid of the old yeast. That's what the service is all about today. Get rid of it. Then he said you'll be like a fresh batch of dough made without yeast, which is what you really are. Because Christ, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed for us. See, what God left out, leave it out. What God has taken out, leave it out. Because God has something for you. I want to do something just before we go to music, okay? Can you play me a major scale? Okay, go. Let's see, start. Right. Do it again. That's a major scale. That's an octave. That's C. That's the key of C. So the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Right? That's a major scale. Play it again. How many of you had music theory? That's the C scale. So what's great about C? No flats, no sharps. So play the first four. Okay, play C through F. Okay. Dun 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 dun. Leave 2 and 3 out. Play C and F. Okay, play the first 4 again. Okay, play 1 and 4 and 6. That sounds like something. Play 1, 4, 6, 6. Play the whole scale again. Okay, play 1, 4, 6, 6. That's 5. Play 1, 4, 6, 6. Okay? That sounds like something. Play the whole scale once more. You got a harpsichord? Is that a harpsichord? Put it back on piano. That's a scale. I play 1, 4, 6, 6. Play it again. Amazing grace. Play slow. Amazing grace. That's a song. It wasn't a song when we played it all, but it's a song by leaving something out. But when you put it all together, play the scale again. That's not a song. When I would play that, my mom would get, my dad would get irritated because I just play scales all the time. That's not a song. How do you sing to a scale? But when God leaves some things out, 1, 4, 6, 6, C, F, G, G. That's a song. And you thought God was punishing you because He left some things out of your life. God said, no, I'm taking the scale, I'm taking the rudiments, and I'm building something. I'm going to take some things out of your life so I can make a song out of your life. And the things you've been going through, and the things you thought you had to give up, and the things you thought God was mad at you, God said, no, I'm causing all things to work together for good. Because you trust me and because you follow me, I am making a song out of your sorrow. And there's some things I'm leaving out, just like this unleavened bread, so I can take you from where you're at to give you a song where you need to be. So right now, I want you to just go like this. I'm getting rid of that criticism. I'm getting rid of that complaining. Go like this. Anoint my mouth, Lord. The psalm says, Lord, put a watchman over my lips. That's a great prayer for all of us to pray. God, just put your big old angel right here, and don't let anything come out of here that doesn't add to a song. Because God, you haven't called us to play the scales. You've called us to sing the song. You've called us to make, here's what the psalmist says. God has called you to sing and make a melody to the Lord. So you're here today because God says, I'm writing a song in your life. Lord, it can't be a song. It sounds like a scale. It sounds like nobody could sing what I'm going through. It seems like nobody understands what I'm going through. You can't even insert it in a bad song. And God said, I'm not making a bad song out of your life. I'm making a masterpiece. Trust me. Trust me. Father, how we love you, Lord. Lord, there's been times we thought we knew better. There's times we thought common sense trumps faith. There's times we thought we have a better way than you do. But Lord, you're causing all things to work together for our good. We may not understand. We may not understand. Lord, let me say it again. There's things we do not understand. Even if we understood them, it wouldn't make them any better. It wouldn't get a resolution that we desire. So God, we're not asking you to give us understanding of what we're going through, because you promise that whatever we go through, you're going to be there with us. And Lord, whatever you've taken away, you're making room for more of your presence. Lord, the hurts that we're experiencing because of loss, you're making into a beautiful song. Lord, they had to leave leaven in Egypt. Because where you were taking them, they could have a memory of what they used to have. They just couldn't take it with them. So Lord, all of us here have a memory. We all have a memory. We all have things that if we could go back and do things over, we probably, every one of us would. But Lord, you've taken those things out of our lives. You've removed some things on purpose. Help us to trust you today. In the name of Jesus. In the name of Jesus. I want to ask you two things, and they're going to lead us in some worship. There's some things God's taken out of your life. You've fought, you've begged, you pleaded God to put them back. Ask God if there's any other way that I don't have to go through this loss and this hurt. God says, no, I'm making a song out of your life. So today, if you want restoration, if you want to be able to have a beautiful melody in your life, you want your life to be a beautiful melody, and I want to invite you to come. We're going to pray. We're going to pray because what God leaves out is what's making you a masterpiece. If you're here today and you've never even accepted Jesus as your Lord and your Savior, today you can come, and the blessing begins today. When you come into a relationship with the Lord, that's when the blessings begin. That's when God pulls that trigger and says, here you are. Now I'm ready to add. Now I'm ready to take you to a new place. Now I'm ready to restore, deliver, and set free. I'm going to ask you to stand. Please don't go anywhere yet. We're going to receive communion in just a few moments.